I'm Nima Rajan. Ottawa is facing more criticism for not acting fast enough to save Afghans who helped Canada during its military mission there. A special immigration program announced last month that it is plagued by bureaucratic and technical problems. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada supports a move to set up a safe zone in Kabul. Canadian veterans and refugee advocates are now working to protect hundreds of stranded Afghans. They are still waiting to hear about their applications for passage to Canada. It is day 17 of the federal election campaign. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau will bring his campaign to the Ottawa area this morning with an announcement in Kannada. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole was also in Ottawa, and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh continued campaigning in British Columbia today. This as the main federal party leaders made election promises yesterday. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole pointed out that the pandemic brought a surge in pet ownership that had positive and negative aspects. He laid out a plan to ban so-called puppy mills and put an end to animal abuse. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau outlined a freshwater strategy in Quebec. He is promising to invest in restoring Canada's big lakes and river systems. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh told Ottawa reporters his government would stop super-rich companies from using tax loopholes. He is promising to boost spending at the CRA to help crack down on what he is calling ultra-rich tax dodgers. Meanwhile, a new poll suggests the Conservatives and New Democrats have momentum heading into the second half of the federal election campaign. 34% of decided voters who took part in an online Leger survey over the weekend said they support Erin O'Toole's Conservatives. That's higher than the 30% support for Justin Trudeau's Liberals. And it's a 4-point gain compared to the Liberals' 5-point drop since the campaign began in mid-August. Support for Jagmeet Singh's New Democrats is also up 4 points to 24%, while Green Party support has slipped to 2%. In Quebec, support for the Bloc Québécois stands at 29%, behind the Liberals' 33%. Nova Scotia gets a new government today. The Progressive Conservatives won 31 of the legislature's 55 seats in the August 17th election. The surprise win ushers in a new era of Nova Scotia provincial politics. Edmonton is reintroducing mandatory masks for indoor public spaces. The city says the rule takes effect at 12:01 a.m. Friday, and it will remain in effect until December 31st. This or until active cases drop below 100 per 100,000 for 10 straight days. The city says the mask rule applies to the publicly accessible areas of businesses, retail shops, and includes city recreational facilities, transit centers, and LRT platforms. Yukon's government is reporting its first case of COVID-19 in a long-term care facility since the pandemic began. The government says the person is in isolation but otherwise is in good health. Residents and staff in the same unit are being monitored. Yukon has 4 long-term care homes with 220 residents. Ontario says kids with runny noses will not be told to stay home under the province's COVID-19 safety protocols for schools and daycares. The updated online COVID-19 screening tool lists fever, chills, cough or barking cough, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell, and nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. Children reporting any of those symptoms are to stay home, isolate, and seek COVID-19 testing. Health authorities in Quebec are recommending a 3rd dose of COVID-19 vaccine for people who are immunocompromised or on dialysis. This is based on the advice from the province's immunization committee. Anyone who qualifies for a 3rd shot is able to get one immediately at any walk-in vaccination clinic across the province. The U.S. State Department is urging Americans to reconsider travel to Canada. The new Level 3 travel advisory issued last night coincides with a notice from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control pegging Canada's level of COVID-19 infection as high. A planned ignition covering 30 square kilometers is underway within a wildfire zone west of Vernon, BC. The BC Wildfire Service says the controlled burn will be done at the northeast corner of the White Rock Lake fire, where the terrain is steep and rocky. The over 800 square kilometer fire has been burning since mid-July. Statistics Canada says the economy contracted at an annualized rate of 1.1% in the second quarter. It was the first quarterly contraction recorded since the sharp drop in real GDP in the second quarter of 2020 during first wave lockdowns. Statistics Canada says driving the drop in the second quarter of this year were declines in home resale activity and exports. The agency also says its initial estimate for July shows a contraction of 0.4% for the month. Statistics Canada says total economic activity in July was about 2% below pre-pandemic levels recorded in February 2020. All right, stay with us as we take a deeper look at a dangerous rescue mission in Afghanistan facilitated by the Ukrainian military. A group of Afghan interpreters and their families are Canada-bound after a bold rescue by Ukrainian soldiers. The rescue effort was organized by the Ukrainian military, President Volodymyr Zelensky's office, and the Globe and Mail. The group of 19 Afghans included a translator who worked for the Globe, along with another who worked with the Canadian Armed Forces. According to the Globe and Mail, Ukrainian special forces went out on foot into the city of Kabul to rescue the group of 19 Afghans. President Volodymyr Zelensky hailed the operation, while the foreign minister says that Ukraine would be happy to provide further support to Canada. With us today is an officer who personally participated in the rescue operation. Oleh is an officer of Defense Intelligence of Ukraine. His face and family name are being withheld due to security concerns. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily, and thank you for your efforts in Afghanistan.
Hello, thank you for giving a floor for me.
And can you walk us through this operation, Oleh, and how it was organized?
To this end, the Ukrainian evacuation mission was conducted in two stages. In addition to the citizens of Ukraine, the evacuees include UN representatives, members of human rights organizations, employees of Global Mail, USA Today, Washington Post, Stars and Stripes, and others, as well as people who cooperated with the coalition contingent. The rescue operation was carried out by the staff of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, Ministry of Internal Affairs, with the assistance of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and with the support of the Office of the President of Ukraine. And during the operation, there were issues that required contact with the leaderships and official services of other countries, which is why the coordination center worked around the clock throughout the evacuation. And in order to find the safety, pick up people from the evacuation, Special Operation Forces unit of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine walked outside the protected perimeter of the airport. None of the other evacuation missions dared to make such a risky decision, as the area outside the airport was already under control of Taliban militants. However, this approach allowed to find and pick up the maximum possible numbers of people agreed to the evacuation in this short period of time.
Now, Oleh, this mission happened just hours after the suicide attack at the airport. So can you give us a picture of the landscape you had to navigate for this mission?
After the suicide bomber blew up the entrance to Abbey Gate, any contact with the territory behind the controlled perimeter was very dangerous because the intelligence of the coalition forces constantly reported that the threat of a new terrorist act. And by the way, it's unclear who and how the Russian Federation evacuated because they were not seen at the airport and were never met in the city. And our troops were on the place of the attack the hour before.
And how did navigating the landscape on foot work for the Ukrainian military's benefit? We know other attempts to get Afghan translators to certain meeting points at the airport had failed.
Anyway, I think the success is because of the training, and we know how to navigate the city even if you don't know the language. But it's lucky for us that lots of people know English, so you can ask and know the way of moving.
All right, Oleh, we've just got about a minute and a half left here, but can you tell us about the overall condition of the 19 Afghans who were rescued and how they reacted to the mission, their overall sentiment?
Okay, all evacuated citizens underwent personal control and verification of documents, medical, social, and psychological assistance, as well as water and food were provided to all evacuees of the territory of the territory base where defense intelligence officers were stationed. Despite the fact that Ukraine did not have its own peacekeeping continent in Afghanistan, it managed to achieve the strategic result. Ukraine ranked the 7th place of the number of evacuees among the European countries. More than 700 people were evacuated.
All right, just about 45 seconds left here, but Canada and the Ukraine share a long history, which includes the Canadian Armed Forces assisting to train Ukrainian troops. What is the message Ukraine is sending to Canada through this rescue?
Okay, I don't know how if it can be called a signal, but if so, it's a clear signal that Ukraine is a reliable partner who is ready to help despite the danger in any part of the world. And I, as a military man, don't understand why there is any doubts about the membership in NATO in the world community. It is the act of the servicemen and men who do not stay away when civilians are in trouble. So since the beginning of the aggression against Ukraine, Canada has expressed its constant support for sovereignty and territorial integrity of our state. And taking this opportunity, I would like to sincerely thank you for your country for helping Ukraine at a difficult time for our country.
As the federal election approaches the halfway mark, polls indicate a surge of momentum for the NDP and Conservatives. However, as many commentators have said before, the only poll that really counts is the one on Election Day. And voters across Canada have their own unique concerns, including voters in Western Canada. For a closer look at some of their concerns this election, we will speak with Danielle Smith. Ms. Smith has worked in both media and politics, and she is also the host of the Danielle Smith Report on the News Forum, where she speaks with guests about business, industry, and how Canadians can continue to prosper. Danielle, welcome back to Forum Daily. Always great having you on the show.
My pleasure.
So what are the top concerns of people in Western Canada this election?
I think the overriding concern is what the policy is going to be around energy development and the transformation of the energy sector. The federal Liberals launched a consultation they're calling the Just Transition. And when they did that before for coal workers, what it meant is no more jobs in the coal industry. And so I think there's a great deal of fear and anxiety that that's what they have in mind for the energy sector as well, that this is really just the beginning of a process to completely phase out fossil fuels. And I must tell you, I mean, I talk to business leaders all the time, people in the energy sector all the time. They are prepared to take on the net zero challenge. I was just at a conference last week, and that was the theme of the presentations. It was the race to net zero. How do we get there in our sector faster than anywhere else? And so I think that message isn't getting through very clearly in Eastern Canada, and I don't know that it's getting through very clearly to the federal Liberals. But I think that is a major theme and a major concern that the West has.
And I know the energy sector contributes a lot to the economy in Western Canada. So what are the major economic concerns of people in Western Canada in particular, Danielle?
Well, I think that there's a sense that Alberta wants to be part of the solution. And it's not just Alberta that benefits from a vibrant energy sector. I know it's often believed that the auto industry is the biggest economic driver. It's not. The energy sector is by a long shot, not only for our own economic activity, but also for exports. And so when you've got all of those energy companies paying corporate taxes, hiring high-paid workers, they're paying federal income taxes, they're spending money, they're paying GST, that benefits the federal government too. And so for the entire country to get out of the COVID mess that we're in and the $600 billion of debt that's been racked up and the ongoing deficits, it needs everybody pulling together. And it needs Alberta, a strong Alberta and a strong energy industry moving in that same direction. We're just simply not going to get any of our economic needs met if we don't end up acting as a country. And that's what I think that's what I'm hearing is that unfortunately campaigns should be about where we find our common ground. And I think there's this danger that this particular election is not unifying, that is creating more division. And we'll find out after the election, because Alberta is going to be having an equalization referendum a referendum to end the practice of equalization enshrined in the Constitution. And I think depending on how this election goes, if Alberta doesn't feel like their contribution is being valued, I think what you're going to see is that that referendum is going to get a pretty high level of endorsement, which again isn't the greatest for national unity and a national discussion. But I think it's up to the federal politicians now to set the tone.
And this plays into the issue of Western alienation as well. So what are some ways that federal leaders of all political stripes can address this issue in particular, Western alienation?
Well, I think it all comes down to, I think Alberta feels like it's a bit of an outlier when it comes to the environmental issues. And I don't think it should be. I mean, when you look at where all the political parties are in agreement on the issue of pricing carbon. Everybody just feels like we should do it a different way. I had a conversation in the last couple of weeks with somebody who's in the business of creating carbon credits. And her analysis was that Alberta could be net zero by 2027. Now imagine that if Alberta has the ability, because of our ability to move to geothermal and hydrogen and carbon capture utilization and storage, to get to net zero faster than anyone else in the country, then we don't actually have that much to disagree with. It's just a matter of how do we work together to get to that end. And if we can find a solution on the environmental issues, find a solution that will allow us to all benefit from a growing economy and a growing and expanding energy sector, then we can have a discussion about how do we pay for existing social programs or expanded social programs. But I think we all have to come to an agreement on the fact that Alberta has a right to exist and Alberta has a right to continue to have well-paying jobs in the energy sector. And I'm just not sure that we have that agreement yet.
All right, Danielle Smith, always great having you on Forum Daily. And if you'd like to take a look at Danielle Smith's show, it's called The Danielle Smith Report on the News Forum. You can check it out online or on our network. Thank you again, Danielle.
My pleasure.
All right, we take a look at what's making news around the world after the break as thousands of Louisiana communities face weeks without power. We'll have that story and more after the break, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. Louisiana communities battered by Hurricane Ida are facing the possibility of weeks without power. Ida ravaged the region's power grid, leaving the city of New Orleans and hundreds of thousands of other Louisiana residents in the dark. There is no near or clear timeline on when power will return. The Louisiana governor's office described damage to the power grid as catastrophic. Power officials said it could be weeks before electricity is restored in some areas. Well, the Taliban now have full control of Kabul's international airport after the last U.S. military transport plane took off from the facility yesterday. The U.S. left behind 200 Americans and thousands of desperate Afghans who couldn't get out. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says work will continue to try and get Americans and Afghans out. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada supports a French and British proposal to create a safe departure zone at the Kabul airport. China is imposing limits to the amount of time that children can play video games online. The country is limiting children to 3 hours of online gaming a week. In addition, minors in China can only play games between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Fridays, weekends, and on public holidays. The changes are to take effect Wednesday, September 1st. Consumers are seeing higher prices in the Eurozone. Official figures released Tuesday show annual inflation hit 3% in August. The price jump could influence upcoming wage negotiations in Germany, which is the largest of the 19 economies that use the euro currency. For now, the central bankers are saying that price rises are only temporary and that the economy still needs pandemic support efforts. Saudi state TV says a bomb-laden drone has targeted an airport in southwestern Saudi Arabia, wounding 8 people and damaging a civilian plane. It is the latest assault on the kingdom amid the war in Yemen. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. The Saudi-led military coalition is fighting the Iran-backed Shiite rebels in Yemen. A Center for Public Integrity investigation finds that the U.S. Postal Service regularly cheats mail carriers out of their pay. Arbitrators and federal investigators have found managers at hundreds of post offices around the country have illegally underpaid hourly workers for years. Private arbitration records from 2010 to 2019 show that at least 250 managers in 60 post offices were caught changing mail carriers' time cards to show them working fewer hours. Workers at 3 U.S. Starbucks coffee shops in the Buffalo area have filed petitions with the National Labor Relations Board asking for a vote on union representation. Employees cite chronic problems such as understaffing and insufficient training. In a statement, the company says, quote, "We respect our partners' rights to organize, but believe that they would not find it necessary given our pro-partner environment." The Greek government has replaced ministers in charge of public security and health after wildfires and COVID-19 cases have caused widespread discontent. In a cabinet reshuffle, retired Admiral Evangelos Apostolakis was named as head of a newly created civil protection ministry that will also be in charge of firefighting operations. However, he pulled out hours before being sworn in after the political opposition accused him of being disloyal. Fires fueled by heat waves have destroyed more than 1,000 square kilometers in southern Greece, while huge blazes also hit nearby Italy and Turkey. Poland's constitutional court is due to convene and could finally give its postponed ruling on whether Polish or European Union law has primacy in the country. The court agreed to examine the matter at the request of Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki. He asked for the review in March after the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that EU law takes precedence over the Polish constitution. A Bangladesh anti-terrorism tribunal has sentenced 6 Islamist militants to death in the brutal slayings of 2 men, including a prominent gay rights activist. The killings were part of a wave of attacks targeting foreigners, religious minorities, and secular bloggers. The government has claimed success in controlling the militancy after a nationwide crackdown on radical Islamists left dozens of militants dead and many others in jail. A new analysis finds that birds of prey worldwide are on decline. Researchers say 30% of 557 raptor species worldwide are considered near threatened, vulnerable, or endangered. Globally, the biggest threats to the predatory birds are habitat loss, climate change, and toxic substances in the environment. A pregnant Afghan woman went into labor while being flown to safety from Afghanistan on a U.S. evacuation aircraft. The child was delivered by the 86th Medical Group in the plane's cargo bay after landing at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. The mother named the baby girl Reach after the aircraft Reach 828 that rescued herself and her child. Air Force General Todd Walters, head of U.S. European Command, stated that child's name will forever be Reach, and as you can well imagine, it is my dream to watch that young child grow up to be a U.S. citizen. I'm Nima Rajan, and this was Forum Daily.